PLP was suing the state of California over the dredge ban. Okay, that went on and on and on with Judge Ochoa, and was stayed pending the Reinhardt case, which went to the state Supreme Court. Unfortunately, after things were going well in the Supreme Court and the state Supreme Court, so he didn't really have a good preemption case. But the miners didn't know it. They just were, everyone, including PLP, was behind them. We ran out of funding. GPA pulled their funding and others, and PLP almost went bankrupt with the legal fees. So we had settled with the state, but I had a backup plan, but it required a little bit of implementation and waiting, and we had to litigate a couple other issues in state and federal court on the issue of what is a pollutant and what comes off the sluice, because the environmentalists and the agency was still telling us that dredge or sluice is a point source discharger that requires a 402 permit. So we had to litigate that in count 5 with the Godfrey case, and then count 2 with the Osprey case in state court, and we won it. Not a lot of fanfare. We didn't have, people there. It was just a handful of people in the courtroom, and it was on record. We've got the transcripts on our website, and we also have the case decision from the Godfrey on our website. Otherwise, it's not published. The government rarely likes to publish things that don't go in their direction, but we wanted to do it because of the precedent that broke the mold of what they have been establishing before that, along with the miners, by the way, too, because there was some thought that the lesser of the evils was the 402 permit for dredge and fill, and that unfortunately is still an admission of discharge, which is not what you want to do in order to make the new addition argument. So what we did is we found another path. We knew that there was an exemption in the Fish and Game Code 5653.8, which says that you're not a person for the purposes of 5653 and for necessitating the need for the individual permit. So if you're a partnership, association, or corporation, you're exempt from the requirement of needing a permit. Okay, so we knew about that, so we sat on that for a while, but we didn't want to put this card out prematurely until the other brick wall was broken, which was what is a pollutant. That one, the fine was $51,000. So you don't want to challenge that unless you really know what you're doing. So we finally went ahead with that, with the litigation. So the guide card, and this is not a permit for the Fish and Game. This is merely a guide card of how to come out from underneath a mining premise and move it over into reclamation intent. So you can keep the gold, provided you have mineral rights or permission. Keep the gold to offset the costs of doing your reclamation. And when you do the reclamation, it has to be legitimate. You have to remove trash, lead, mercury, and other foreign substances that are considered trash from the waterway to clean it up, to be a legitimate reclamation project. You can't just say, I'm mining gold, because you're going to get in trouble. And all the guys that are still dredge mining are getting popped. They're getting their dredge confiscated. Day after, I just got a call from a guy up north who they're flying drones in after the miners and popping them. And so there was some circulated earlier this year that, they've given up, they're not citing the miners anymore. Like, well, the truth is, they're not citing the PLP guys that are using these cards that got their legal ducks in order. But they're purposefully targeting the people that are mining, dredge mining, and that aren't doing it in accordance with the law.
So how do you define reclamation in there to their
Reclamation has, you can look at Army Corps or engineers, they all have various definitions of reclamation. You could say, okay, reclaiming it, restoring the land from what it was in a water body. Reclaiming is, I look at it strictly as you're recovering that which you have lost previously. So you're reclaiming.
Yeah.
So
I'm saying for
Mercury
the
was lost.
park ranger, how do you satisfy him? He's there looking at your dredge going, are you mining or are you reclaming?
Park ranger.
Right. And that's my
Whatever.
order.
The guy.
Forest Service.
Oh,
It'll
yeah.
be a Forest Service or a fishing game.
Right.
Who approaches you. And you explain to them, here's my paperwork, here's proof of my reclamation activity. You show them your partnership agreement, notarized. That's the legal document that officiates the fact that you're doing this. Then that instantly takes you in position of the 5653.8 exemption. Okay, that's critical. But that little issue, controversy, the fishing game, lawyer in Sacramento relayed to one of the guys, say, well, it may exempt you, don't sell this to the public. But they're saying, okay, you don't need the individual permit if you got a partnership. Okay, but don't tell that to the public. And they're still, they won't acknowledge anything in the public about that because they want to acknowledge that they have a loophole in the law, which was put in there a long time ago. And I think it was done, for the grant monies, these groups, the water districts, to do their reservoir, reclamation of gravel and mercury, right? Comby Reservoir in Nevada County was a prime example of one such site. And they like to do more, but they don't have the grant money, right? And there was a case, I won't name the name or the exact location, but up north in the Gallia area of Butte, there was a guy who was working in full view of the agencies, including Fish and Game. And the county commissioner said, well, we can't get on board with this. He said, why? Because of the dredge ban? He says, no, you don't have the grant money. And he says, I'm not asking for grant money. He said, well, how is it being paid for? Who's paying the freight to do this work, to remove the syringes? You've already removed the homeless camp syringes and the tires and all the trash out there. Now you're doing the dredging. But who's paying for this? So, again, I'm not asking for money. It's self-funding. And then he explained it's gold that we're getting on the bottom of the creek. It's paying for it. And the agent, the planner said, well, that's wonderful. I wonder if we could duplicate this in other places. So, I mean, it's bureaucrat, and they don't really understand that miners were doing this long before they were ever in that position. So we're approaching this kind of in a rather humble fashion, saying, if we really want to reclaim our waterways, we have to get more people involved with doing this. Private sector can do it at no cost to the taxpayers. We'd happily do it if there's enough gold to pay for it and being recovered. So anyway, so the card we have again is a guide card, and we tell people go ahead and download the Osprey and the Godfrey cases and put that in your folder, make another copy for someone with authority who's questioning your activity. The next is to download the Fish and Game Code 5653.8. One sentence, one page. Put that in your folder. That is item step 2. Step 3 is you download our sample partnership agreement, which is, we got it as a boilerplate, off of some, outfit legal documents, RS or whatever it was. I forget, we won't fill that off. Anyway, we modified it a little here, put in their reclamation partnership agreement for dredging, or let's see, exception dredging for reclamation purposes, partnership agreement, simple. And it even mentions about grants, if people wanted to solicit grants. So it would be dependent on the terms of the grant, partnership agreement. So we did the most simple boilerplate partnership agreement. We're not a PLP member to the town. As long as you have 2 people or more on there that are going to be manning that dredge. I see, and that's the way they're covered. They're actively working on this as a partnership. They can't just say, Yeah, I was doing this help out, so, well, are you part of the partnership?
Well, what if you
Yeah.
by yourself?
Yeah, you got the partner to do that?
Find someone. You know, we're just, you know, I've had guys say, well, but I've always worked by myself. I said, well, you've heard of the buddy system. I always mind by myself too.
Right?
But you gotta know someone who you can trust. You don't even have to be
Have to be there?
there. No, this is just, you know, to officiate a partnership, to come under that category. But ideally, you want to have all the people that are going to be on that bridge, on that partnership agreement, so they're covered by the exemption. Okay, so, and then the last step, step 4, is download and print the 33 USC 1362 subsection 12 and 16. And the reason why that covers you on the water board issue, because the water board is implementing the PLP program, federal EPA Clean Water Act program, which regulates all discharges in the waterway. Because of the Godfrey case in step 1 and the Osprey case, those kind of are together with 1 and 4 on the steps. They're the ones that prevent you and shield you from the liability issues with the water board. Because we found, unlike other miners that didn't argue it correctly in Oregon or in Idaho, they admitted their discharges for the purposes of 404 because they thought the dredge and fill was less egregious or less difficult to pick. But what they didn't know is that it was de minimis, and they were under a previous injunction in the 1990s and 2000 by the Mining Association and the Home Builders Association. So they cannot go there and do that. And so that's not an option. So PLP was, you know, not an active plaintiff in the case that Risco that we monitored it. And I wouldn't be aware of it if not for a past precedent.
Body of water and stuff?
Discharged into, but it has to be a foreign substance, not a substance found within the waterway. That's what's discussed by the judge in the Godfrey case. And we call Godfrey the bowl of Cheerios guy, because the judge made an analogy of a bowl of cereal, and the cereal was staying in the water, milk came up and went down, and a few Cheerios got hung up on the bowl, but they're still part of the same bowl of waterway. And it's a more in-depth analysis in the water transfer cases in the LA case.
Is it because the water is being removed from the water source, the body of the water, and then brought back in?
Yes, the judge looked at it, and even the Pacific Legal Foundation has articulated it in the sense that you have to look at the whole waterway, the high, basically the flood level, high water mark down, and that's the constituent space. So if you're taking material and using it within that water body,
Right.
you've added nothing.
That's what
And it's called the no, and I call it simply the no addition argument.
Right, that's what I was trying to figure out why they're calling it a discharge of the water source.
Well, here's the
Outside.
thing, and that's why we have the instructions to download 1362 subdivision subpart 12 and 16, because it states the discharge is defined as an addition of material into the waterway. Okay, the lawyers and the other miners got in trouble because they did not see that. That's why we have this on the card, is to help people not run afoul of the mistakes. We didn't use that analogy.
Not that term.
We used a pure no addition argument, and that is, and when I testified in the Superior Court here, the Downieville, in the Osterbrink case, the DA allowed me to testify, even though if I blended a little bit of law, even though I wasn't a law lawyer, they said, okay, you can testify to issues of fact. Initially, they didn't want me to testify because they knew my history when I was in government and prevailing more often than not. And so I told the judge and the prosecuting attorney, DA, I said, so the last time I checked, isn't the defendant allowed to witnesses in this favor? And, oh, yes, Mr. Pearson, of course. And so I testified, and what I did is I brought in the Godfrey case, the federal case, even though they didn't want it brought in, and judicially noticed it. But what I did is I identified, and I stated to the court, which is the truth, that Mr. Osterring did not import a foreign substance to the waterway of discharge. And based upon my understanding of state law regulating pollutants in waterways, it must be an imported foreign substance in discharge. The same way with the Godfrey case in federal Clean Water Act cases. And I brought that in judicial notice as an analogy outside the court. And initially they were like reluctant, and then I said, I'd like to judicial notice it. And so they accepted it as the record. And they came back, and the judge came back. I thought they'd take a while, so I left and drove home. And then they called me, so the judge ruled in my favor when we came back. He said, okay, great. And so we have the transcript of that decision. She didn't do it in writing, but it's an official transcript of the case beside the decision. So the key is, don't try and argue, the dredge has some minor impacts or de minimis impacts. It goes down to a real discretionary thing, whose science is best. The best way to win a no addition argument is to shift the burden of proof to the government, making the case say, you're polluting. Okay, well, show me, since the law requires I add something to the waterway in order for it to qualify as a pollutant, show me the evidence where I backed my pickup truck and dumped a whole of gravel in that street or whatever. And that's how you win. As you shift the burden to prove to the government that which they cannot prove. They don't have the evidence. So that's how you win. It's a good way to beat the government, quite frankly. You're calling their bluff on the premise of discharge. If you bring in material that's foreign to that area outside the waterway, that is a discharge of foreign substance to the waterway. Now, it's interesting that I've commented to another gal here, and that Fish and Game commonly brings in gravel for spawning and drops it in the creek and puts it out there. Well, that is actual discharge of foreign substance. Even though it might be clean quartz, but don't volunteer anything. Unless better off unless you say. So you're basically showing them and volunteering that you're a partnership for the purpose of reclamation. You're exempt, here's the code, exemption, paperwork. It's impressive, it does work. I've done it. I've done it in Forest Service case on the prohibitions, certain activities when they close a whole area. I said, well, I'm a landowner, I have a mine claim pursuant to this exemption in the code. As a landowner, I have to speak for the forest order from the supervisor's office. And then I use the Hicks case. Hicks is be here later. I don't know if he's going to be early enough, but tomorrow he'll be around. He's the one who set and won against the U.S. Forest Service on some Davidic cases. And they are still very valuable today. Yeah.
I did the format partnership agreement with my wife, had it notarized. Do I need to publish it anywhere or record it or anything like that, or just have it?
You don't have to. I mean, if you want to you'd have to talk to CPA, business advisor, if you want to go the route. If you went to, say, a corporation or LLC, okay, you're talking corporate law and stuff. All I'm looking at is that, does the state law require certain levels of documentation for partnerships? Take the cheapest, the simplest route. If you want to expend out your equipment, then you're going to probably want to talk to a CPA and say, should I morph out of this partnership into, an association or LLC or something like that?
So just notarization makes the partnership.
Yeah, that's what makes it's official, because it was premeditated and recorded. I mean, in the sense that it was not recorded, but it was notarized. So you have to provide proof of your intent beforehand. You can't just, I told one gal I felt sorry for her last year, and she got all excited. She heard through the grapevine there was a way to dredge again. So she got her dredge, moved it up there on the river, set up a bank, and told her friends, I'm going, mining. And the friends ratted her out. And then she calls, has her other friend call, say, hey, we heard that PLP has a way to do this legally? He says, yeah. What happened? Well, they confiscated my equipment. Okay. And then a week later, we got a citation. And I said, okay, let me see if I got this right. You heard about it, you decided to go up there and dredge without a permit or anything. And then you call it PLP. Yeah. I said, okay, but it's like this. And I said, if you get pulled over by a CHP and you say, yeah, I don't have my driver's license, but I was going to go to the DMV next week, do you think he's going to let you out? And it really comes down to you can't just jump with this thing. There's paperwork necessary. I mean, it costs you what? PLP membership to support the cause, $20 to a notary, for God's sakes. And you're dredging. So, I mean, it's pretty inexpensive. And you don't have to pay the extortion fee to the water board in dredging areas that don't have go hold. That's the only place they're allowing, the permits to be processed. And that was a whole great thing. Right? So, this is just a way that we can utilize what the Sierra Fund is utilizing. Sierra Fund, not that they created this exemption, but the exemption was before the legal battles over prohibition. I forget, it goes back to pre-1990s, I'm not sure, the 5653.8. So I look at it as, okay, if they just start citing minors for doing the reclamation, then we've got a hell of a good, not a preemption case. It's called, when you have two tiers of different justice. It seems to be happening these days. Especially the place called Washington, D.C. But it's called, what's the word I'm looking for? When you have one standard for one person, another standard for another. Equal, have you heard of equal protection under the law?
Yeah.
Okay. The government would actually create two causes of action or affirmative defenses, in my opinion. They would have an equal protection argument and also discrimination against the class. So if the environmentalists are the only ones that are close ties with grant monies, can only do reclamation dredging, and yet miners who wish to repurpose their gold dredge with reclamation dredging at no cost to the taxpayer, and the state has a problem with that, yeah, I think we got another good quarterback. And we do it probably on a affirmative defense rather than civil action. It's just, the lawyers always win. And it just sucks the life out of the mining community to make those kind of battles. So anyway, we figured out a path. The Oster Creek and the Godfrey case helped pave that path for the pollution premise. Because to this day, the environmentalists from here to Idaho to Washington State all believe that dredges produce a pollutant that spew out pollutants, even though they don't. My thinking is that we've got to change that. We've got to win more cases, but we've got to get people in the water to do it the right way. To have a good affirmative defense that's strong, and don't affiliate yourself with people that are saying, well, I think we got to get the work towards the Army Corps of Discharge Committee. There are miners, and I'll give you I won't name his name, but San Gabriel River, Santa Ana Sucker, dangerous species. I got a call last year from an old PLP member who's rejoined, and he gave me one hell of a good story. Most of the time he lives after Iowa, he's homeless, and he dredges on the San Gabriel River. And Forest Service comes there, the biologists come by, and they're swimming, and they're trying to find Santa Ana suckers. And so they happen across him, and he's dredging, he's got these holes, and say, hey, what you doing, Rich? And we're studying for, finding Santa Ana suckers. And he says, oh, I've got lots of my dredge holes. And no, here, borrow my mask. And so the gal went underwater and literally saw hundreds of Santa stuff just in one hole. And she's like, oh my God, this is great. And then she said, you know what? This dredging, I'm reminding you can't do, but you're doing it for reclamation. Yeah. Yeah, I'm getting the lid up, getting it clean to the river. Well, you're still, are you doing this or doing this? And she recommended, the biologist for the Forest Service. And she said, yeah, you need to do it right, comply with the state law, and you have a certain way to do it. You need to get with PLP so they can tell you, that's why he called us. He says, hey, here's the thing, is that if we're having agents, biologists out in the field, now saying, we like to see dredges back in the water because we're seeing results. We have flourishing, endangered species where the dredge is. I told him, I said, if you could write a summary of this, if we put it up with your permission, put it on our website, we'd love to do it. So I said, okay, well, I'll see if I can do that. But we've got other guys that are hopefully going to be submitting their stories. I told them, hey, you don't have to put your name. You can just say Billy Joe, Bob, on, the river, whatever, in California. Well, I only recommend at this time, even though he doesn't have a claim on the Santa Ana or San Gabriel River, he doesn't have the mineral rights. So technically, the government could charge him with mineral rights. So we're saying, and don't go on another person's claim and put your dredge, because you don't own the gold. Go on areas that you have permission from private property owners who have the mineral rights, or claim holders, or your own company. And then you're safe. That way you can keep the gold to offset the costs of doing the reclamation. Yeah. And there's a bonus. If you're doing this for the claim holder or your claim, guess what? That's an improvement. That counts as assessment to satisfy BLM. If it's open for mineral entry and no one has a claim on it, then you can, if it's open to the mining law, that means that you're open to claiming if you find valuable deposits, or be able to claim it. So basically, I'm telling you yes. And the step 1 and step 4 is so you don't run afoul of the water board with the discharge issue for the 402.
So if someone was
That's two brick walls we had, penetrate and go through or go around to deal with to bring the dredging down. Use best management practices. You're going to say, well, what's that? Right? I'll give you an example of best management practice. Say you're high banking and you're sending some turbid water back in the river, right? Well, what can you do to mitigate that?
settling,
Or straw wattling or hay bales to help absorb the sediment. I've seen people actually do that, during the dredge ban. And they put it in literally 30 feet behind the dredge, and you couldn't see anything behind it. And there were property owners behind it who were swimming and happy that you can help dredges everywhere on a stream. And so you're mitigating the aesthetics of maybe a bad aesthetic of seeing turbid water. But turbid water or turbidity is only a measurement of clarity. It's not a measurement of fluid. Because again, where did that suspended solids come from? It wasn't introduced. The environmentalists would say, oh, well, it was introduced into the water column. So they rejigger those definitions and they take something and shrink it down to a small area instead of looking at the waterway as a whole, as a water column. So they try and play the switcheroo on them, and you don't let them do that. That's where, an affirmative defense, he can't come into court and persuade the judge to do that. The judge looks at the evidence. Was there an addition? No. Okay.
Under reclamation, are you required to remove a certain amount of trash?
Nope, not yet. Now this is a whole new world. Right now, California does not have active reclamation regulations. I'm not saying they won't in the future, but right now they don't. Oregon, on the other hand, does, believe it or not, for voluntary cleanups in waterways. And I'm working with the group up in Oregon right now on getting that implemented for helping the miners up in Oregon in essential salmon habitat areas. Yes.
So Fish and Game wouldn't be able to come in and say, this area has now been cleaned, no more dredging.
Well, Oregon, they've told one person who tried a different strategy a few years ago, they said, oh, well, the dredging, yeah, we don't need to clean out the essential salmon habitat zones because it's already clean. There's no
Right.
contaminants in there, which is totally false. It's just you're discriminating against the dredgers, no surprise. But that was originated from the bad, what happened when the virus spread from California to Oregon to Washington, about the premise of the dredge. And we got out lobbied and outspent by the environmentalists. And they had more influence than we had. Yeah.
The old 1992 regulations I'm going to talk about here kind of, as an example, they had Class A, no dredging allowed year-round, and B and C and D, and I think H, dredge year-round.
Different classes, yeah.
Like for instance, on the San Joaquin River below Fryan Dam, Class H, other places too. You don't have a claim there, but you can dredge there in essence still, I would have to say. Let's say you don't have a claim, but you're looking to get a claim, the prospector is supposed to go out there, well, he might dredge and see, oh yeah, I want to have a claim here, so you don't have to have a claim necessarily, I'm going to say. Yes.
But I would recommend that you
That would be best if you have a
use
claim.
this in areas where it's open
Yeah,
for location under the mining act. Yes,
Because
that
you
way
can be
can
down
have
where-
your own.
you can be down where like lots of people are fishing, there's lots of lead weights there, and it's a Class H, and you're going to be doing your job and get gold too.
Yeah, you're getting the lead out, you're getting the mercury out, and we funded a study, it's ongoing, it's taking forever to get done. A geologist and sedimentologist who worked under the Reagan administration, he's rather elderly now, he still has his license, geology license and everything. But he was going to upgrade his study that he had finished in 2016 but never published. And I told him, did you get this other science, the latest on mercury and atmospheric transport from China? And he says, no, but I'm aware of it. I said, well, how about integrating that into your analysis? And because he knows that the dredge is the number one tool to remove. He's already given me a little peek into his conclusions from a scientific study, but he feels that California has gotten more polluted, not less, because no one's actually removing the lead and mercury out of our waterways. The dredges were literally, the guys do it, right? Miners were doing it. Now the miners are out of the water, except for the guys doing the reclamation stuff. But the actual numbers have been going up because, in the words of environmental terms, it's the cumulative effect of continual deposition from foreign sources. And it's coming from China through the jet stream, burning dirty coal, going into the atmosphere, going into the jet stream, and then precipitating back down into our lands and waterways. And that's just not me saying this. This is peer-reviewed study over a decade ago that's concluded this and followed where it came from. So who's cleaning it up? Not the state, not the environmentalists. It'll be the miners out, areas that are way out away from where the general public goes and the other creeks and whatnot. They were the ones that first started doing this. Figuring, well, this is a good way to do this, and we've got a backup defense if we ever do get caught. So they used that initially, but then it crashed to, well, if you're doing it, I'm going to do it. Then it just kind of grew over time. And now we have people saying, I'm going to do this and show the world, no, don't do this as a protest. Just do your thing, be professional, this is not a shove it in your face and get arrogant and condescending. Because we have an opportunity to prove ourselves that we're kind of like the new 49ers, the new dredgers. He told me that she said, well, I'm good about this dredging, I'm going to defer to the water court. Okay. And I asked Josh, did you bring up the Godfrey case? No. Well, I said, well, next time you talk to him, you might want to do that, because the Forest Service was the one that lost in the Godfrey case on the pollution charge of the water. So the left hand really hasn't communicated with the right hand yet. It's not for our lack of trying, because we've already, when we first, before we even released this guy, we shared a copy of what the Fish and Game, and it led to a huge meeting with all the bigwigs, with all the agencies. What do we do about this? How do we know this? Through the Public Records Act request. So we've got documentation, or whatever the members does. That the agencies are like, well, you know, we can't allow this, we can't allow that. Well, but they are using an exemption. Yeah, well, it's the same exemption that environmentalists use. What do we do? If we close this loophole, we'll shoot ourselves in the foot for the grant money for the environmentalists. So I could have written this up differently and just utilized the loophole for miners, for mining. But I thought, you know what, we'll close that loophole in 2 months. So the answer to your question is, I had a call yesterday too, the guy up north, he just got his thing and printed out. And he said, oh, they're flying drones up over us, you know, and they're gonna go after the miners, you know, up there and they're dredging. I said, well, are they doing a reclamation? Oh, I'm not sure. Let's go find out, because they're asking. I know this because I've heard it reported 4 separate times, that they are asking who you're affiliated with. And once they find out, you know, because they know PLP, they know we've taken them to court. And I don't think they want to go to court again. I don't think we do either. We want a way to do this. And the guys that are good guys in the fishing game, who said, we got more important things to do, like these marijuana, these Mexican nationals coming up here, they're destroying the land, diverting the waters, leaving a mess. We got a big enough problem with that. And then, you know, we got a little bit of war going on in some counties over that. We don't have time to deal with these little dredgers. You know, we should leave them alone. They're just trying to make an honest living. And that's great, you know. But there are ones that are still kind of on that bandwagon from the extreme environmentalists who believe that all dredging is bad. And that handful is getting smaller. Because over time, we're hoping the miners themselves demonstrate their good intentions by their own actions and documentation and professionalism. Everybody,
Next one is
goes out there,
102-1413.
do the reclamation, do a good job.
1413.
Don't let us down, and we could be dredging for years if everyone does the right thing.